Welcome to the CTA Foundation CES interview series. My name is Steve Ewell, and I'm Executive Director of the Consumer Technology Association Foundation. And I'm really pleased to be joined today by Marcie Roth, the Executive Director and CEO of the World Institute on Disability, as well as Miguel Quiñones, the User Experience Research Manager at Google and a WID board member. Miguel's actually a recent Googler joining over there, having previously served as the Director of UX Research and Accessibility at TrackPhone, where I know he had a great experience working with WID prior to joining Google, and now has even more opportunities. So welcome, both of you. So happy to have you joining us here at CES 2021.
Thanks so much, Steve. This is a great opportunity, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, first off, for those that don't know about WID, Marcie, could you share a little bit about the work that you do?
I'm happy to. So the World Institute on Disability was founded in 1983 by three incredible people, a woman named Joan Leon, Judy Heumann, who you may be familiar with for the work she's done over the years, or most recently, because she was the most featured star in the recent movie Crip Camp. Judy Heumann was one of our second founders, and our third founder, a man named Ed Roberts, who some folks may be familiar with as well. WID was established to be one of the first disability-led disability rights organizations globally. And the organization has been working over, the past almost 40 years to advance the rights and opportunities of people with disabilities worldwide. You may or may not know that globally there are about 1.3 billion people with disabilities. And so WID focuses on some very specific areas, access to technology absolutely being one of them, accessibility solutions being more broadly a part of all of that. And one key area of our focus is in what happens for people with disabilities and communities before, during, and after disasters and public health emergencies, and as well in climate adaptation and the inclusion of people with disabilities in climate change related issues.
Well, that's a lot of really incredible work, and I know we're going to have a chance to dig into a few of those areas during this interview, so definitely look forward to that. We've had the opportunity at the CTA Foundation. We work with a lot of disability organizations, but most of them are really, focused in on, blindness or hearing loss or mobility and, kind of a very specific population. Can you talk about, why is it so important to have an organization like WID that's really working across disability?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are a number of reasons for that, but, one in particular is that there is tremendous strength in a cross disability, or as I've recently heard it called, a pan disability approach, in bringing together folks who share a commitment to equal rights and full inclusion for the whole community. So, rather than focusing on a specific set of functional needs or a specific diagnosis, as we move more into eliminating communities' barriers and society's barriers to people with disabilities, when people with disabilities come together with our allies, with our partners, to focus on whole community inclusion, I think it helps the community to really benefit and not just individuals.
That's great. And Miguel, being a board member of WID and, being in the nonprofit space, I always have to thank people when they decide to serve as a board member of nonprofits, because it really is incredibly important. I know you have other kind of CTA member companies that are serving on the board alongside you, but I also know it's a major time commitment for you as you're starting a new job and yet having the opportunity to get involved. What was it that really attracted you to stepping up into the leadership of WID?
Yeah, so for me, and thank you for the question and this opportunity. I've been working with WID, more or less since 2014, and it was then that I had the opportunity not only to learn what accessibility and inclusion means. I saw the impact firsthand. And one of the things I can say, I mean, as an organization or as an individual, a lot of times you don't necessarily realize what that means to a person. And the passion that the WID staff has, not only for helping me understand how to keep individuals with disabilities in mind as we look at product evolution, but also the actions needed for an individual person as well as an organization in order to take the steps needed in order to develop products that were inclusive. They were very good at making the steps tangible, realistic, and helping me realize the benefit. And for me as an individual, seeing the level of commitment as well as the absolute impact was very easy to get behind. And looking at our involvement, over the last several years, I wanted to continue that work. And as WID has, really diversified how they support the disability community, it's certainly an exciting opportunity to be involved.
Well, it sounds like you've really had the opportunity to have a great evolution of your career as you've engaged in the accessibility space. And so has WID, I guess it's essentially helped you both with the companies that you've worked for, but also personally and professionally engage with a wider network across the disability space. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And if I think of WID, WID has been a phenomenal mentor in not only helping me understand what I need to do personally, they've also been very good at directing me towards the conversations that are taking place about diversity and inclusion. And that's everything from speaking to advocates that are advocating on behalf of individual users, as well as speaking to other organizations that may support people with disabilities in different ways.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, and that diversity and inclusion piece is so important. It's certainly a major topic that we're having across the country right now and need to continue to have. And it's a major piece for us looking at the technology industry and making sure that things like, disability, age, other demographic considerations are also part of that discussion as well. So I think it's really an incredible opportunity to bring together diverse voices and move forward the types of technologies that we can have serving the communities we are all working with. Marcie, I'd love to dig into one of the programs that you were talking about before. You have such an incredible background working in disaster response and recovery, and in particular, how to engage people with disabilities in that process. Now, you've come together with WID. You've brought in corporations, foundations, and other organizations to launch the Global Alliance for Disaster Resource Acceleration, or GADRA. Could you share a little bit about, what is that program and how is it doing this work?
Sure, Steve. And here comes my cat. One of the advantages of working from home, right? So the Global Alliance for Disaster Resource Acceleration was born out of about 20 years of my work, starting in the immediate aftermath of the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001, and watching how there is tremendous humanitarian support in disasters, and that humanitarian support never really makes it to those local disability-led organizations who are doing work on the ground on a daily basis. And in disasters, these are the folks who know how to address the complex transportation issues and the complex housing issues and how to navigate benefit programs and how to support people who are in crisis. And yet these folks never get access to the kind of support that they need in order not just to help people with disabilities in their community, but to support the whole community in its most difficult days. And so we established GADRA to bring together the corporate and foundation folks who are so supportive of communities after disasters, and who are also folks who support disability organizations in non-disaster related efforts, and bringing them together with disability-led organizations to work in partnership, not from a charity model, not from a pity model, but rather as a collaborative to strengthen outcomes for the whole community during and after disasters. We launched this, we intended to launch this late in 2020. My board approved the launch of the Alliance about a week before the whole world kind of fell off its COVID axis or off its axis because of COVID. And so it just became very clear to us that that was the time. And we've been incredibly fortunate to have absolutely wonderful corporate and foundation founders circle members. We've had, we started by listening to the community. And when I say listening to the community, we've had 69 countries join us in town hall meetings in which we've discussed what actually is it that those local disability organizations need in disasters. And we've heard from humanitarian relief providers that they have a very difficult time getting their support to the people who really need it on the ground. So we've already, thanks to one of our fabulous corporate and foundation partners, Bristol Myers Squibb, we've already been able to bring folks together in Puerto Rico and in the aftermath of Hurricane Iota to try and get some support to folks here in the US and globally. We've also, through our work with our partners, the Partnership for Inclusive Disaster Strategies and On Inclusiva, we've also been working on a daily basis on focusing on the COVID-related imperatives for those local organizations serving people with disabilities, as well as so many people who are acquiring disabilities as a result of their having contracted COVID. So it's a very exciting initiative, unfortunately, at a very difficult time, but we've already made great progress. We're excited about where we're going in 2021 and hoping to add other important partners to that process in what we call disrupting exclusion by accelerating radical inclusion on the ground where it's needed most and when it's needed most.
Well, that really is, it's incredible. And it is such an important topic. Going back, prior careers, I used to do some work in infrastructure protection, and, disaster response and recovery was such a major area. And, the disability community really needs to be at the table and involved in that planning and response. So I'm really excited to see. Now, you mentioned also, you're launching something addressing disasters in the middle of a pandemic. Certainly not how we all planned this past year to go. But how has that impacted your ability to deliver services to the people that you're working with? And how are you able to then take these pillars of your strategic plan and make that important for the people you're working with and partners and service community?
Great question again. And so, first and foremost, the power of technology to provide access has without the work that your foundation and many of the members have done. It would be far more difficult for organizations like mine to be able to provide accessible resources in a world that was, until 10 months ago, a face-to-face kind of world. So it's been a really great opportunity to use technology to level the playing field, as we have often said, and using that to help folks to actually make what they do more accessible. I'm hoping that the workplace will be a far more accessible workplace now that we've sort of cut through all of the misperceptions about the work that people with disabilities bring to the workplace. Certainly the user testing that WID does. We do all sorts of user testing. And until this year, our user testing was always on site. Miguel might want to speak to a little of his experience with user testing, but it has become possible for us to bring people with disabilities together with folks with new and changing products, and give everybody an opportunity remotely to try out under development product, services, goods, to make sure that the widest consumer base is able to use those goods and services and products moving forward.
Miguel, did you want to share some of your experience working with some of those user testing products?
Yeah, sure. And I think one of the greatest benefits of working with WID, and as you have pointed out, is that WID is cross disability. And as you look at the needs of the population, depending on the type of disability, the needs and what an organization needs to do to adapt to those needs is very different. So in my experience, not only are we able to address low-hanging fruit to make products accessible, we also had the opportunity to look at the outliers. Not only behaviors that may be specific to individuals with disabilities, but also very specific needs, because the way that I consume content may not necessarily be the way that someone that uses a screen reader consumes content. The logical order of information on a page, or the way that we talk about a product, or even what's important about a product, varies greatly, depending on user needs. So I think being able to work with WID and having access to a very diverse, user population absolutely strengthens, not only the value, that a product has, but also just that product being accessible to a greater population.
That's great. Well, speaking of products, here we are at CES 2021 digitally this year, but throughout this week, we're going to be hearing from companies launching, the latest products, the things that we're all going to have a chance to get our hands on. But we're also going to be having a lot of conversations about, what are the technologies that are coming, 2, 3, even 5 or 10 years down the road that may, impact all of our lives for the better. So, Miguel, I'd love to kind of pick your brain. And are there, emerging technologies that it doesn't have to be work related, but that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, so I think, with the pandemic last year, and I think that there's going to be a general shift in the way that we think about work from home and even learn from home. So as we start to spend more time in our home, smart devices, that utilize AI to help, the convenience in our lives, so to speak. Even though I have attempted, and I don't want to say very poorly, but I've had my challenges with, kind of cultivating a smart home. I would love to do the same thing for my mom, but I do not want to be tech support. So as we look at the way that these products evolve and hopefully it becomes, easier, to set up and maintain, I'd love to see, what the next evolution with smart homes is going to bring.
Well, I have no doubt that is going to be a major topic of conversation at CES this year. And we're seeing, more and more products that are, meant for, obviously for the smart home for individuals, but also provide some of that caregiving support as well, and provide the right balance between, service and support for the individual while also providing the privacy for that individual as well. So it's a great area of innovation, and I look forward to continuing the conversations in that space. Marcie, if people want to learn more about WID, all the user testing, accessibility solutions, GADRA and the disability and disaster organization, basically all this different work that you're doing, where should they go to find that information?
The best place to go would be our website, which is www.wid, which is WID.org, wid.org. And you can always reach out to me directly, Marcie, MARCIE, at wid.org. And I'd be happy to listen to what you're thinking, and as well connect you with folks who may be able to support you as you, move forward in providing accessibility in, right from the start.
Well, that's great. I encourage people to take a look at all the work that WID's doing and see how you can get involved with some of that work as well. I'll say we've had representatives from WID attending CES for quite a few years now. And I think it's so important to bring together leaders from the disability community with leaders from industry. And in many cases, quite frankly, there are people that represent both those. They're leaders in industry and leaders in the disability community, but to have those conversations. So it's such a pleasure talking to both you. So thank you again for joining us here at CES 2021.
Thank you so much. What a great opportunity. And I'm excited about all that I'm going to get to see and hear and learn about this week.
Yeah, echo the sentiment. And again, thank you both for the opportunity.
Well, absolutely. Well, I look forward to continuing the conversation. And for the audience, if you're interested in learning more about the CTA Foundation, you can go to ctafoundation.tech. And I hope you have a wonderful CES 2021.